135/85 is normal. A deadly mistake that has taken away many people's voices forever. Do you think a blood pressure of 135/85 is normal? Have you been told that as long as it's under 140, you're fine? Did you know some people with that exact number have lost the ability to speak forever? As a brain specialist, I used to believe that too. Until the day I met Mr. Richard. He was 68, living in Ohio. A typical retired man, ate moderately, checked his blood pressure daily, and it stayed steady around 135/85. That morning, he happily took his dog for a walk, came home for breakfast, and told his wife, "See? My blood pressure's the same, I'm healthy, right?" That afternoon, at 2:17 p.m., he collapsed in the kitchen. The right side of his face went stiff. His right hand fell off the counter. And he couldn't say his grandson's name. I saw him in the emergency room. I looked at the MRI of his brain and my throat tightened. His brain vessels had been silently damaged for years. No pain. No warning. No one told him that 135/85 could be dangerous. His wife said through tears, "I wish I had known that number wasn't as safe as they said." I don't blame her, and I don't blame Mr. Richard. I blame the false sense of security medicine sometimes gives us. Because we assume that normal is enough. But your brain doesn't wait for you to ask if it's okay. The brain only knows how pressure is killing blood vessels every single day, and that isn't easy to recognize until it's too late. Brain vessels don't hurt, but they may be tearing every day without you knowing. Have you ever seen a leaky pipe in your house? At first, it's just a small stain no one notices. But day after day, the pressure builds. And then, on a cold morning, when no one's prepared, it bursts. The blood vessels in the human brain are just like that. They don't rupture right away. They don't scream when they're damaged. They don't ache, bruise, or swell like the skin outside. But inside, they tear, millimeter by millimeter every day if your blood pressure is even slightly high. I've seen many people like that. They live healthily. My blood pressure is only 135/85, doctor, still fine. No one warned them. No one reminded them. And no one ordered an early MRI to see that the vessels were already under strain. One patient once told me, "I never had a headache. No dizziness. Nothing strange. I just started forgetting my grandson's name. And stumbling over words." When I looked at his brain scan, I knew the damage wasn't new. It had built up day by day, week by week, year by year in silence. You see, high blood pressure doesn't strike like a storm. It's more like a constant drizzle soaking deep and quietly into the foundation of the brain. Tiny vessels, especially in the areas of memory, language, and balance, are stretched and stiffened. And then one day, the brain no longer has enough blood to speak, to remember, to stay upright. Do you recall things that seemed simple? Feeling lightheaded when standing up? Forgetting what you were saying mid-sentence? A heavy, foggy feeling in your head? Don't be too quick to blame aging. Because maybe it's your brain's first whisper, "I'm running low on blood. I'm in danger." And if those things sound familiar to you, then maybe it's time to spend the next few mornings paying closer attention to your body. Try recording your blood pressure at the same time each morning for 5 consecutive days. You don't have to panic if it sometimes goes over 130, but don't assume that means you're safe either. Because that may be your brain speaking up softly, but truthfully. Many of my patients were never warned about this. No one told them, brain vessels don't need to hurt to be damaged. And no one ever showed them, the most silent danger lies right between those two seemingly harmless numbers. So, where does that danger zone truly begin? How do you know where you stand on the silent stroke map? Keep going with me and let's read your blood pressure in a language your brain actually understands. What risk zone are you in? So, where does that danger zone really begin? Have you ever checked your blood pressure and seen numbers like 132/84? Or maybe one day it's 128/88, and another day it jumps to 138, then drops back to 124. If you've seen numbers like that, you're not alone. Because there's a zone called the gray zone, the one many people think is fine. But it's actually not safe. And to be honest, this is exactly where I meet the most patients in my department. The danger is it's not high enough to alarm you, but just enough to silently damage the brain day by day. We tend to think anything below 140 is safe, but the brain doesn't care about round numbers. All it cares about is the blood flowing smoothly each morning? Is the pressure stretching the vessels in the memory or speech areas? And right in that zone, you may begin to experience subtle changes that often go unnoticed. Have you ever felt your mind slowed down when sitting up in the morning? Ever been mid-sentence and suddenly forgot the word you were going to say? Or had days where you felt awake, yet floating through fog? We often call it mild confusion, age-related forgetfulness, or dizziness from poor sleep. But to me, those are the brain's gentle knocks before it screams through a real stroke. I'm not saying this to scare you. I just want you to start reevaluating the numbers you might still be calling normal. Because the most damage happens in the period when we think we're fine. So now, here's what you can do, something very simple. Just measure your blood pressure at the same time each morning, after resting for about 5 minutes, before coffee or physical activity. Record those numbers for 5 consecutive days. If most days are over 130 systolic or over 80 diastolic, please don't take comfort in that. You don't need to wait for a doctor to label it hypertension before making changes. Because honestly, your brain vessels don't care whether you've been diagnosed or not. They just need you to keep the pressure steady. They need to breathe. They need to relax. And the good news is, you don't need medication to begin easing those numbers. Just 5 minutes each morning with a few small changes can help your brain's blood vessels breathe more evenly again. Come along with me to discover how caring for your brain can start with the smallest thing, a single breath. Just 5 minutes each morning you can save the blood vessels in your brain. I know you might be thinking, what can 5 minutes in the morning really do for my brain's blood vessels? But you'd be surprised. Because there are things so small they seem almost invisible, yet when done regularly, they create a change the brain can clearly feel. Let me tell you something interesting. We once followed a group of people over 60, living in a northern suburb of Seattle. They did just one thing each morning: sit still, close their eyes, and breathe slowly for the first 5 minutes of the day. No meditation, no rituals. Just simply letting the breath return to themselves. After 6 weeks, none of them lost weight, no one added new medications. But nearly 80% of them began to see more stable morning blood pressure. Dizziness reduced. Minds felt clearer. And most importantly, they felt like they had something to begin the day without rushing. You can start in a very gentle way, right after opening your eyes. Don't sit up just yet. Let both hands rest gently on your belly. Inhale through your nose, slow and deep, until you feel your belly rise. Then exhale slowly through your mouth, as gently as blowing a petal away. Repeat that 5 times, 10 times. No need to count, no need to force. Just do it. As a way to greet the new day with kindness toward yourself. If you do this every morning, your brain's blood vessels will learn how to relax again. The morning pressure will ease. Blood pressure won't spike suddenly the moment you get out of bed. And if you'd like to add one more small step, drink a glass of warm water before breakfast. No need for lemon, no honey. Just warm water to wake up the circulation and give your blood a smoother flow. Sometimes, that's all it takes. No medication. No warnings. Just you and a very small decision, repeated every morning. Many people think avoiding stroke requires something big. But as someone working in neurology, I've seen the opposite. It's those who take care of their mornings, they're the ones who go farther, stay steadier, and keep their minds clear well into old age. And if you're wondering, can something that simple really be enough to prevent a stroke? Then let me tell you a story. A small story that might make you reflect on the entire journey of your own life. The final story, a morning saved just in time. I want to tell you a story I will never forget. It began on a chilly autumn morning, as the weather in Seattle turned cold. Her name was Eleanor, 72 years old, living alone after her husband passed away. Her children lived far away, but she was still doing well, cooking for herself, tending her plants, walking every evening. She kept a small notebook recording her blood pressure every morning for nearly 4 months. The day she came to my clinic, she opened her notebook, handed it to me without saying a word. I looked at the numbers. The first day's 135/84. A week later 138. Then 139. Then back down to 132 on some days. Not too high, but not stable. And she knew. She didn't wait for the first dizzy spell. She didn't wait until her speech stumbled or her hand went numb. She listened to her body from the smallest things. I asked, "Why did you start recording your blood pressure so regularly?" She smiled gently and said, "Because I read somewhere that the brain doesn't like in-between numbers. I don't want to collapse without having time to call someone." We ran a few tests. The results showed early signs of minor brain vessel stiffening. Not severe, but the perfect moment for change. And we began together with very simple habits. 3 months later, her blood pressure was steady around 127. She still lived alone. But she no longer felt alone. Because every morning, she knew she had started her day in the best way: a deep breath, a glass of warm water, a page in her little notebook, and a decision for her own health. You know, throughout my career, I've witnessed strokes take away voices, memories, and even the love someone has for their family. But I've also seen people saved by a quiet, simple action. Like Eleanor. We can't control everything. But we can always begin with something small, something deeply human. And if you're still wondering what the number on your blood pressure monitor this morning really means, remember her story. She didn't wait for her brain to scream. She listened to its quietest knock. You can do that too. Starting tomorrow. If you just listen one beat sooner, your brain will thank you for a lifetime. You know, after all this, what weighs on me the most isn't the severe stroke cases. It's the ones who came too late. Just because they thought their blood pressure was still okay. Just because that number wasn't high enough to scare them. But the brain doesn't need a high number to be damaged. It only needs you to care early. One beat earlier. One morning. One simple note in a journal. Today, if you've listened this far, I believe you've already given yourself a gift many people lose: the awareness that your body is changing and that you can do something before it's too late. You don't have to do everything. Just start with one deep breath. One closer look at your blood pressure reading. One act of genuine care for your own brain. And if you feel this is worth sharing, please send it to an older friend beside you. Or leave a short message. Because who knows? Someone out there may need this exact story to hold on to their memory, their voice, and their dignity. If you found this video helpful, please tap like so I know I'm heading in the right direction. Leave a comment so I can walk with you, listen to you, and support you if you ever need. And if you like more healing messages like this, please follow the Thrive 60 Plus channel, where I'm not just a doctor, but truly a companion walking beside you through the later years with strength, wholeness, and meaning. Thank you for staying until the end. And I'll see you in a very special upcoming video, where we'll explore why even mild insomnia could be an early sign of dementia. See you in the next chapter of Thrive 60 Plus.